It was Mother's Day, and my son, a rich and busy businessman, came by with a big bright bouquet of flowers. He set it on the table, gave me a look that was nice but kind of distant, and said, "Mom, my wife's still sending you that $5,000 a month, right? I just want to make sure you're okay." I froze. My heart started hammering. $5,000. For the last 8 months, I'd been getting by on food boxes from the church and a little help from kind neighbors. I whispered, my voice all shaky, "Son, the church has been helping me make ends meet." He just stared at me, his smile completely gone. And that's when my daughter-in-law walked in looking perfect in a silk dress, with shiny high heels and a cloud of expensive perfume that just felt like she was laughing at me. Her smile was $1,000,000, but her eyes were colder than any winter I'd ever felt. She had no idea that on that day her fancy little act was about to end for good. If you're still here with me, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Every comment you leave means a lot on this journey, and if this story hits home, don't forget to hit like so more people can see it. My name's Dorothy Mitchell. I'm a 67-year-old widow, and I live all by myself in a small house on the edge of Dallas, Texas. This house used to be filled with so much laughter. It's where my husband and I raised our only son, Brandon. After my husband passed from a heart attack 10 years ago, I learned to take things slow, working in my garden and cooking. Now and then I'd teach Bible classes at St. Mary's Church right down the street. I didn't have a lot, but it was enough. Then I got older and everything just got more and more expensive. Brandon, the little boy I used to hold in my arms, is a millionaire now at 38. He owns a bunch of tech companies and drives a brand new Tesla. He lives in a mansion in Park Cities where the property tax for 1 year is more than I've made in my entire life. I was proud of him, of course. I raised him with my own 2 hands, always believing he'd grow up to be a good, kind, and thankful man. So when he walked into my house that afternoon looking tired but still so handsome, my heart felt warm right up until he opened his mouth. "Mom, my wife is still sending you that $5,000 every month, isn't she?" It felt like all the air got sucked right out of the room. My heart was pounding against my ribs, and my hand squeezed the corner of my old apron. I tried to smile, but my mouth was bone dry. "5,000, I repeated, my voice cracking. "Son, the church is how I'm surviving." Brandon's eyes got wide, and his smile just vanished. He looked over at the woman who had just walked in, Ashley, his wife wearing a pearl-colored silk dress and sparkling silver heels. The smell of Chanel No. 5 just filled up my small living room, totally covering the smell of the apple pie I baked to welcome my son. Ashley gave a small smile, the kind that looks warm but feels like ice. "Oh, Mother, you must be forgetting," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "I stop by every month to bring you the money, remember?" I looked her straight in the eye. "If you did, it must have gotten lost somewhere." I said so quiet you could barely hear me. The room went dead silent. I could hear the ticking of the old wall clock, the sound of cars outside, and the pounding of my own heart. Brandon looked back and forth between us, between his gray-haired mom in her apron and his glamorous wife in her designer dress. He looked so confused. "Ashley, you have been bringing the money." "Right, I send it to you every month." Ashley just tilted her head, her smile never breaking. "Of course, Brandon. I'm here every single month. Maybe your mom just forgot. You know how it is getting older. The memory starts to go." Her words were so sweet, but they hit me like a ton of bricks. Old age. I've heard that so many times since my husband passed. People think a widow is just some old lady who can't remember anything. But my memory is just fine. I remember every bill I pay, every prayer I say, every single face at church. And I knew for a fact Ashley had never given me 1 red cent. I just nodded and kept my mouth shut. You don't fight every battle the second it starts. Sometimes you just have to watch. Brandon got up, came over, and put his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, it's probably just a mix-up. I'll check the bank records. I just want you to be comfortable not worrying about anything." I gave him a small smile, but inside something had woken up, a feeling that something was very wrong. I didn't say another word, just cleared the dishes and put a glass of orange juice down for him. Brandon sat and Ashley slid right up next to him, putting her hand on his shoulder like she owned him. She looked me up and down, cold and dismissive. The kind of look you get from someone who thinks money buys everything. Suddenly, the room felt ice cold. The sun was shining right outside, but I felt a chill run right through me. Ashley's eyes scanned the room, barely stopping on the old pictures on the wall. Brandon as a little boy, all blonde hair, bright eyes, and that big, happy smile. She let out a little sigh. "You've really done a great job keeping this house so clean. Mother, especially at your age." I just smiled. I'm old, sure, but I'm not so old I forget who walks through my front door, Ashley. Brandon looked nervous. Mom, come on. It's Mother's Day. Let's not get upset. I just want you to be happy, son, I said, looking straight at Ashley. So do I, but being happy isn't about what people claim they've done for you. It's about what they've really done. Brandon just froze, and Ashley's smile got tight before it vanished completely. After they were gone, I just sat there in the living room. The sun was coming in through the curtains, making patterns on the old wood table. $5,000 a month for 8 months. That's $40,000. That money could have fixed my leaky roof or bought me a new refrigerator. It would have let me live my last few years without worry. Instead, I was counting cans of soup from the church pantry and thanking God for every free loaf of bread I got. I put my hand on my chest, but it wasn't anger I was feeling. It was a deep hurt that settled deep inside me, a quiet, painful ache. That night, I got out my old notebook, the one I used for grocery lists and prayers. But this time, I wrote something else. Find the truth. And right under that, don't trust her fake tears. I closed the book and took a long, deep breath. I wasn't some weak old woman. I'd survived losing my husband. I'd survived being lonely and broke, and I was going to survive this too. Brandon might be fooled by her, but I wasn't. And if Ashley thought I was just going to sit back while she played the perfect daughter-in-law, she picked the wrong person to mess with. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting in my little kitchen. The sun made long golden stripes on the floor. My tea had gone cold, but I didn't move. I just stared at my old phone and wondered, what if I'm wrong? Maybe it was a bank error. Maybe Ashley mailed the checks and they got lost. Or maybe I really was confused. It's not like I just forgot. No, I remember every single little gift I've ever gotten. And there was never a letter, never an envelope, and no money from Brandon. That night, I got out my old ledger. It was the one I used when I was the treasurer for the women's committee at church. I flipped through the pages, every line written out perfectly. $12 for blood pressure medicine, $24 for the bills, $10 for the community dinners at St. Mary's. Every single expense was recorded. Not one mention of a transfer from Brandon Mitchell. Nothing. The next morning, I went to the First Texas Community Bank, where I still have a small savings account. I sat down with a young teller named Jessica and handed her my passbook. Can you please check if there have been any transfers from Brandon Mitchell? He says he's been sending me $5,000 a month for the last 8 months. Jessica looked a little surprised, typed for a moment, and then she gently shook her head. I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell. There's nothing here. The only thing on the account was an interest payment of $1.35 from back in February. I just nodded, thanked her, and stood up. Outside, the Texas morning wind was blowing through my gray hair. I stood on the sidewalk and it felt like a stone just dropped right through my chest. No transfers, no envelopes, no letters, nothing. For 8 whole months, I'd been clipping coupons from the paper buying canned soup instead of fresh vegetables and thanking God every time the church brought by food. I was used to eating alone to counting my change before I went to the store, but never, not even once, did I ever imagine that my son's silence was all just a lie. I went home, put my purse down, and just sat there without moving. The ticking of the wall clock filled the quiet house. It was a wedding gift from my husband 40 years ago. Each slow tick of this clock seemed to whisper, the truth is coming out. That afternoon, I went to St. Mary's Church like I always do. Reverend Anderson, who's known me for more than 20 years, saw me sitting in the back pew after the service. He walked over, his voice so kind. Mrs. Mitchell, are you okay? You look tired today. I managed a small smile, trying to hide that my hands were shaking. I'm just trying to understand why my son's letters never made it to me. Reverend Anderson put a hand on my shoulder. The Lord has a way of making sure the truth comes out. Don't lose faith. I nodded. But inside, faith wasn't going to be enough. I needed to do something. That night, I opened a brown leather notebook that Brandon gave me for my 60th birthday. On the first page, instead of a prayer, I wrote, if they're lying, I'll make them tell the truth in court. I pressed the pen down hard on the paper. Under the lamp, the words looked like a promise. From that day on, I started writing down everything. Every time Ashley visited, I wrote down the date, the time, and her exact words. Thursday, June 14th. Ashley came by with a cake. She said, the money's been sent. Maybe the bank is just delayed. No envelope, no proof. Saturday, July 12th. She called, said she couldn't make it because of a charity meeting. I could hear restaurant music in the background. Line by line, I wrote it all down. I wasn't angry or hateful, just very careful, like someone who spent a lifetime balancing checkbooks, knowing that numbers never lie. Over the next few weeks, Ashley kept visiting, and she always looked perfect. Designer dresses, expensive handbags, sparkling high heels. Each time she'd bring a little gift like flowers or cookies, sometimes scented candles, but never an envelope. One afternoon in August, I was outside watering my garden. Her white Mercedes pulled in. Ashley got out looking perfect, like always holding some lavender. "I brought you these to help you relax," she said, all sweet. "Stress is bad for your memory." I put the watering can down and wiped my hands on my apron. "My memory is just fine, Ashley. It's good enough to remember you've never given me a dime." Her face twitched for a second, but then she put on a big fake smile. "Oh, Mom, you've got to be mistaken. I've been sending it. It must be your bank's fault." I just smiled and started arranging the flowers. "Maybe, but I already called them. They said nothing has come in for 8 months. It got real quiet. Even the birds on the fence shut up. Ashley started playing with her necklace. "I'll double check," she said real fast and then rushed back to her car. All I could smell was her expensive perfume. I just stood there and watched her drive off. I felt bitter, but everything was crystal clear now. She lied and she knew I caught her. That night I wrote it all down, Ashley. August 22nd. Lied, nervous, left early. Every word I wrote felt like a punch to the gut. I wasn't some weak old mom praying by herself anymore. I'm Dorothy Mitchell, the woman who's been through lost debt and a lot of broken promises, and I was going to get through this and get the truth out. Over the next few weeks, I called Brandon's bank. I acted like I was just asking about family gift transfers. They couldn't give me any private info, but one nice guy there gave me a hint. He said, if money was sent, it had to go into an account with your name on it. If you never got it, then someone might have opened another account using your name. Those words sent a shiver down my spine. Another account with my name on it, but it wasn't mine. I closed my notebook and took a deep breath. I knew what I was dealing with. Ashley's smart, charming, and she knows how to play people. She can even get her husband to do whatever she wants. But I was an accountant for 3 different companies. I handled thousands of dollars and never lost a single penny. If someone was dumb enough to forge my name, I was going to find them. That night, I read over every single note I'd written. The lamp was shining on my handwriting. It was shaky but strong. As I read, I could almost see my husband's face. He always used to say, "Dorothy, if someone thinks you're weak, don't yell. Just let the truth do the talking." I closed the notebook, and I felt weirdly calm. The next morning, I went to church with a small envelope. It had copies of all my notes inside. I gave it to Reverend Anderson and said quietly, "Father, if I can't make it to church one day, please keep this safe for me." He looked worried. "Dorothy, what's going on?" I gave him a small but firm smile. "I'm just making sure the truth comes out." Walking home, my heart felt lighter. Like a huge weight was finally off my shoulders. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. There'd be tears, a lot of pain, and backstabbing. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was going to get back every single $5,000 they stole. But more than that, I was going to get back the respect they thought I lost just because I'm old. The sun was setting behind the old oak trees. I just sat on my porch looking at the bright red sky. And in that light I whispered, "Ashley, you messed with the wrong woman. This old mom still has a few things to teach you." I smiled a little, closed my notebook, and wrote one last thing at the bottom of the page. The first step to getting justice is remembering everything. And as it got dark in Texas, I knew my fight was just getting started. That morning, the Texas air felt hotter than usual. I could smell the dry grass and the jasmine vine I planted by the porch. I was trimming my lavender when I heard it, the smooth purr of an expensive car coming up the road. My stomach tightened when I heard tires crunching on the gravel. A brand new silver Lexus pulled up to the gate. The paint was so shiny I had to squint. The door swung open and out stepped Ashley, looking like she'd just walked off a runway. She was wearing a cream linen dress, massive sunglasses, and heels that shined like mirrors. In one hand, she was holding a big gift basket tied with a gold ribbon. She smiled, her voice all sweet like honey, but it had an edge. "Mother, I brought a little something. Brandon's been in meetings all day, so I came for him." I wiped my dirty hands on my apron and watched her come up the steps. "How nice. You two must be really busy," I said, not smiling. Ashley's eyes scanned the garden. "Wow, your garden is still as pretty as ever. I don't know how you do it all on your own." "With these 2 hands and a lot of patience," I said, sticking my shears in a pot of soil. She put the basket on the patio table. It had fancy cookies, a jar of marmalade, and a little bottle of wine. It was all wrapped up nicely, but it felt cold. I knew this kind of gift. Expensive, pretty, and totally empty. I sat down in my chair and poured us both some iced tea. I looked her right in the eye. "Ashley, let me ask you straight up. Where's this month's money, the $5,000 you said you'd bring?" For just a second, her smile froze. You could barely see it. Then she laughed, and it was a sharp, hollow sound. "Oh, Mother, I must have left it in the car." Her voice went up a little as she fiddled with her glass, not taking a sip. I glanced at the Lexus gleaming in the driveway. The sun bounced off the hood, showing off every curve. It was a brand new car with temp plates. She definitely just bought it. I smiled slowly. "Nice car, Ashley. I bet that cost a pretty penny." She shrugged, her laugh sounding brittle. "Oh, not really, Mother. Just a little upgrade. My boutique needs a professional look, you know." "Of course," I said calmly. "A new car for work, but the envelope with my money keeps getting left in the car. That's weird." Her face got tight for a second before she forced another smile. "Oh, Mother, you don't trust me anymore. Next time I'll bring a bank receipt." I didn't answer. We just sat there in silence with the porch fan humming over us. The only other sound was the buzzing of the cicadas. Ashley stood up first, pretending to check her watch. "I've got to run. I have a client meeting, but don't you worry. I'll tell Brandon to wire the money over." "I'm sorry about the little mix-up." I just nodded. "All right, you go on then. Oh, and don't forget the envelope in your car this time." She paused. Her smile was thin, a mix of annoyed and cautious. "You're pretty sharp, Mother," she said. Then she turned to go. I watched her walk away. The sound of her heels on the wooden steps was cold and steady, like a clock ticking. The car door slammed, the engine fired up, and the Lexus was gone in a flash, leaving nothing but a glint of sunlight. When the engine noise faded, I sat back down and folded my hands in my lap. It felt like a brick on my chest. I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. I got up and went back inside. Every step on that wood floor sounded like a drum in my head. I opened the drawer and pulled out my brown leather notebook and wrote, "September 10th, Ashley showed up by herself, brought a gift basket, claimed the money was in the car. New Lexus, no proof." Her voice was shaky, wouldn't look me in the eye. I put the pen down and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking a little, but I knew what I had to do. That afternoon, I walked down to the post office. The payphone there still worked. I didn't want to make the call from my house, not if Ashley was watching me. I dialed Brandon's company and kept my voice steady and polite. "Hello, this is Dorothy Mitchell, Brandon Mitchell's mother. I need to talk to someone in accounting. It's personal." After a minute, a woman's voice came on. "This is Patricia Collins, head of accounting. Mrs. Mitchell, what can I do for you?" I squeezed the phone, trying to keep my voice even. "Thanks, Patricia. I just need to check on one little thing. My son said his company has been taking out $5,000 a month from his account to send to me. I just want to know if that's right." There was a pause on the other end. Then Patricia said, a little hesitant, "Mrs. Mitchell, I can't give out personal financial information, but let me take a look. Yes, I do see automatic transfers for that exact amount on the same day every month. It looks like the money was sent, but I'm not sure where it went." "Where it went?" I repeated. "It didn't come to me." I'm not sure, Mrs. Mitchell. The name on the account is yours, but the account number is different. I just assumed it was your account." I felt a cold chill run right through me. I forced my voice to stay level. "Thank you, Patricia. That's all I need to know." I hung up the phone and just stood there. My heart was pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. So that was it. The truth. Somebody set up a fake account with my name on it, and only one person was close enough to do something like that. Ashley. Walking home, my shadow stretched out long on the road. The wind smelled like burned grass and dirt. It was a smell that reminded me of those poor Texas summers a long time ago. My dad always used to say, "If you want to know if someone's honest, just look at their hands." Honest hands always have the marks of hard work. I thought about Ashley's hands. Long, perfect nails, diamond rings, designer bags, not one single callus, not a sign of real work. I didn't eat dinner that night. I just made some peppermint tea and sat at the kitchen table under that warm yellow light. The house was dead quiet. I could hear the last few cicadas buzzing outside. I turned to a new page and wrote September 10th. Ashley came by all dressed up and pretending to care. New car, same old lies. I called Brandon's company. It's confirmed. The money's still being sent, just not to me. Tomorrow the truth starts coming out. I put my pen down and closed the book. The lamp made my shadow show up in the window. A small woman with silver hair, but with fire still in her eyes. I knew that tomorrow I wasn't going to be just a mother waiting around anymore. I was going to get justice. I flipped off the light and walked out onto the porch. The night air smelled like jasmine and damp wood. In the corner of the garden, the moonlight hit that old wooden bench where my husband and I used to sit and talk. I ran my hand over the worn armrest and whispered, "Robert, you'd tell me to do the right thing if you were here. Wouldn't you?" All I heard back was the wind, but I knew. That was my answer. I went back in, locked the door, and just stood there in front of the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't tired anymore. She wasn't beaten. She was Dorothy Mitchell, and nobody was ever taking her dignity again. And I knew come morning Ashley's little game was going to start unraveling. The next day, I was cutting lavender when I heard a loud knock at the door. It wasn't the mailman or a neighbor. This was a serious knock. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it. A tall man was standing on my porch, middle-aged with graying hair. He wore a nice charcoal suit that looked like he'd been traveling in it. He gave me a polite smile and a little nod. "Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell, I'm Thompson, the head accountant at your son's company. Mitchell and Partners." I looked at him closely. "You're Thompson. I thought Patricia was the accountant I talked to on the phone." He nodded. "Yes, Patricia's my assistant. She told me you called yesterday, and I figured perhaps you should know a few things." His voice was calm, but serious, like he was sorry about something. I let him in and got him a glass of water. The morning sun came through the window and lit up his face. He looked like a man who'd seen too much. He put his leather briefcase on the table and opened it up. There was a thick folder inside, all clipped and organized. I saw the printed text, the columns of numbers. I knew this stuff. It was my life for 30 years before I retired. He pushed the folder over to me. "These are copies of 8 transfers, each one for $5,000, $40,000 in total. The money went to an account in Ashley Mitchell's name." I felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water on me. My hands were shaking as I looked through the pages. It was all right there. From Brandon Mitchell to Ashley Mitchell, all verified by the bank, same day every month, like clockwork for 8 months. I looked up, my voice was scratchy. "Mr. Thompson, who set up this account," he sighed, took off his glasses and cleaned them. "Your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Mitchell, her signature is on every document for the sub-account, along with a signed authorization from Brandon." I just froze. "Authorization? You're telling me Brandon let her use my name?" He nodded. He probably didn't read the paperwork very closely. "She gave them a copy of your ID, which I'm pretty sure was a very good fake. The system just automatically set it up as your account even though she was getting the money." I put my hand to my head. The room was spinning. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was humiliating. "So for 8 months, I asked quietly, Ashley used my name, a mother's name, to take money from my own son. And Brandon, he has no idea." Thompson paused for a second. "Honestly, I don't think he does. Brandon works hard, but he's too trusting. He lets Ashley handle most of the paperwork," and he stopped and looked right at me. "She's also been using the company credit card for her own stuff." I just stared at him. "The company card?" "Yeah, the Mitchell and Partners corporate card. It's supposed to be for clients and business expenses. But lately we've seen some weird charges, spa days, jewelry, new clothes, even first-class flights to New York. Over $30,000 in just 3 months. I just sat there totally silent. The words spa, jewelry, flights, they just kept pounding in my head. I had to turn and look out the window. The sun was hitting the bench where Ashley and I used to sit drinking tea while she'd talk about work. I could still hear her voice. "Mother Brandon's just so busy. I handle everything for him." Yeah, now I knew everything meant every single dollar. I turned back to Thompson. My voice was scratchy, but I was firm. "Mr. Thompson, if I want to expose her, are you going to help me?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm all for justice, but we need solid proof. We have to be really careful. Otherwise, she'll just twist the whole story and turn Brandon against you. Ashley's no pushover." I nodded. "I know. I've seen her do it. She'll smile right to your face while she's lying." Thompson gave a grim little smile. "I'll help, but give me time to get everything together. I need to get all the transaction records, all the related paperwork, and get it in writing from the bank that the account isn't yours. It's going to take a few days, but I promise we'll get the truth." I looked at him, and I could just tell he was a good man, someone with integrity. I hadn't seen that in a long time. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," I said quietly. "You don't know how much this means to me." He closed his folder and stood up. "I'm just doing the right thing, Mrs. Mitchell, and I hate to say it, but stuff like this happens more often than you'd think. A lot of people get betrayed by the ones they're closest to." I nodded, and my eyes drifted to a family picture on the wall. It was Brandon at 10 years old, grinning next to his dad. I remember that day so clearly. It was raining a little, and my husband told me, "Dottie, you've got to teach him the difference between a good man and a smooth talker. They often have the exact same smile." Thompson left after that, leaving me alone with that pile of papers on the table. The door clicked shut, and the house was quiet again. I just stared at that thick file. Every single transfer was proof of her betrayal. I carefully put everything into a small metal box and slid it under the cabinet. When I turned the key in the lock, it felt like I was locking away the last bit of trust I had left in the world. As the afternoon started to fade, the sun was coming across the porch. I made myself a cup of black tea and sat down at the kitchen table, looking out at the garden where the lavender was blowing in the wind. Everything looked so peaceful, but inside, I was just burning with anger. I got out my notebook, turned to a clean page, and wrote slowly but firmly, September 11th. Mr. Thompson came. He brought records of 8 transfers, $5,000 a month to an account in Ashley Mitchell's name. Ashley's also using the company card for her own stuff. She's been fooling Brandon, taking his money, not just mine. I finally have someone on my side. The fight is on. I put my pen down and looked out the window. Outside, the sky was a fiery red. I said out loud to no one, my voice low and steady, Ashley, you forgot I was an accountant for 40 years. I know how to read numbers, and I know how to spot a lie. This time the numbers are going to do the talking for me. I closed my notebook, feeling a little lighter. For the first time in months, I didn't feel so alone. I had someone, a witness, who was on my side. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. The crickets outside sounded like a little drumbeat of hope. In my dream, I saw Thompson standing in a bright light, holding up that file, and Ashley was backing away, her face falling apart as every secret came out. When I woke up, I knew I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the one calling the shots now, 3 days later. With all my facts lined up perfectly in my head, I knew it was time to act. I called Brandon. My son's voice was warm like always, but I could hear he was exhausted. Mom, I'm sorry I've been so swamped lately. Ashley says she's been visiting you all the time, right? I smiled and kept my voice light. Oh, she has, honey. Ashley's so very thoughtful. I was thinking of having you both over for dinner this Sunday. It's been way too long since we've all had a real meal together. Brandon happily agreed, totally clueless about the trap I'd just set. I spent all Sunday morning getting things ready, not because I wanted a perfect dinner, but because I needed it to feel completely normal. Honey roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, apple walnut salad, and an apple pie, all of Brandon's childhood favorites. I polished my late husband's old silverware and set the table with candlelight. Everything looked perfect, warm and sincere. Just enough to make a liar drop her guard. Right when the clock hit 6, I heard their car at the gate. A shiny silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. Ashley got out first, looking flawless as usual, with soft waves in her hair, a green silk dress, and a hint of Dior perfume. Brandon followed her with a bouquet of white lilies. Mom, you look great. Brandon grinned and put the flowers on the table. Son, I feel better than ever, thanks to God and you two. Ashley smiled, her lips curling up in that smug way she has. I knew that look. It's the look of someone who's sure she's pulling all the strings. I poured some wine. We chatted about the weather, the lavender, and the new neighbors down the road. Everything felt so easy, like no secret had ever touched this house. I let her get comfortable, let her relax. Once the main course was on the table, I looked up and smiled. I really appreciate you both so much, especially for this month's $5,000. Ashley froze just for a split second. Then she put on a bright smile and sipped her wine. Oh, Mom, don't be silly. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to. I nodded, playing dumb. I'm just so thrilled. I finally bought a new heater. Texas gets chilly so early, and thanks to that money, I feel so much more comfortable. Ashley's smile got wider, so smug and pleased. She glanced over at Brandon as if to say, see, everything is fine. I watched her for a beat, then asked casually like it was nothing. Oh, Ashley, I was just curious. What day do you usually send it over? She never saw it coming. She answered right away like a reflex. The 10th of every month, Mom. I just nodded slowly. But before I said another word, Brandon spoke up, looking confused. Wait, not the 10th, honey. I set the auto transfer for the 15th. The room went completely silent. You hear that silence? That's the sound of a liar walking right into her own trap. If you were in my shoes facing someone who played you like that, would you stay quiet like I did, or would you blow up right on the spot? Tell me in the comments. I think most of us have sat through a dinner that just imploded like that. The clink of a knife on the plate sounded deafening. They just stared at each other. Ashley faked a smile and blinked a couple of times. Brandon frowned, tilting his head. Really? She asked with a tight laugh. I thought you said the 10th. Brandon's frown got deeper. No, I'm positive it's the 15th. I picked that day because that's when I get paid. The whole room went dead silent. I just smiled softly and put down my fork. Oh, that's great. I'll just go to the bank on the 15th and check to make sure the system is working okay. Ashley let out a brittle laugh, trying to cover how nervous she was. Oh, Mother, you're so thorough. Don't worry. I've been sending it right on schedule. Brandon nodded, but his eyes darted away. He turned to his wife, about to speak. But she quickly changed the topic to work, then the weather. I just sat there quietly watching them both. I felt completely, perfectly calm. It's the calm you feel when you know you've set the perfect trap. After dinner, I brought out dessert, a fresh apple pie, and the smell of cinnamon filled the air. Brandon said how good it was. Ashley barely ate a bite, glancing at her watch like she couldn't wait to leave. I knew she was suffocating in a room she thought she owned. At the door, I said softly, "Thanks so much for coming. I haven't had this much fun in a long time. And remember, I'll check the account on the 15th just to be sure the bank system isn't messing up." Ashley forced a smile. "Yes, Mother, I'm sure there won't be a problem." Brandon kissed my cheek, his eyes kind as always, but I saw something new in them, a tiny little sliver of doubt. When their Lexus pulled out of the driveway, I stood at the door watching the taillights fade. The night wind blew across the yard, rattling the old wooden door. I went back in and closed it softly. I wasn't feeling triumphant. I just felt relieved. I went straight to the little office off the kitchen and turned on the computer. The light from the screen lit up a photo of my husband. His kind smile felt like he was telling me to keep going. I opened my email and started writing to the only two people I trusted anymore. Thompson, my honest-to-a-fault accountant, and Catherine Brooks, my old college friend, who now hunts down financial fraud. I typed slowly, my heartbeat was steady, my mind was clear. Subject: It's time. Thompson. Catherine, everything is in place. I just confirmed Ashley lied about the transfer date. They think I fell for it. But they couldn't even get their story straight right in front of me. I want us to go ahead with the plan. Please start checking every transaction and get the comparison file ready. By the 15th, I want every single piece of evidence lined up. It's time for her to destroy herself. Dorothy. I read that last sentence again and smiled a little. There was something about her bringing this on herself that made me feel lighter. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice coming from the liar's own actions. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the night air blew the curtains, carrying the smell of jasmine and damp earth. I closed my eyes and listened to the clock ticking down to the 15th, the day the truth was finally going to crack open. 2 days later, Thompson's reply came. His email was short, just like him. Got confirmation from the bank. The account in your name was opened by Ashley with forged documents. They'll give us the data once we get a subpoena. Catherine's handling that. Everything's moving in the right direction. B. I read his email, feeling my chest tighten and then release like an old iron gate finally swinging open. I'm not being cruel. I just need the truth to come out so my son can finally wake up. I need Brandon to see that trust isn't some bottomless bank account you can just empty. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote another line like I always do. September 13th, dinner was perfect. Ashley let her mask slip. Brandon's starting to have doubts. The 15th check is coming. Justice is on its way, quiet and steady. I closed my notebook and blew out the candle. In the dark, the moonlight hit my face. I looked in the mirror and saw myself, a woman with silver hair, a little frail but with bright eyes. I whispered, maybe to myself or maybe to my husband who's long gone. Robert, are you watching? She thinks she's so smart, but she's the one who's hanging herself with her own lies. All I have to do is be patient and wait for the 15th. I smiled a little. The trap was set and the mouse was walking right into it. The next morning, the Texas sky was perfectly clear. I sat by the window sipping a hot cup of jasmine tea, and I felt completely calm. Today was the day Thompson promised to send over all the proof. In just a few hours, every single lie would be right there in black and white. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Thompson. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said. His voice was low and steady. "It's all done. I just sent you the full statements and all the related invoices. Catherine's already looked them over. She said with your signature we can move forward with a lawsuit." I thanked him quietly, trying not to let my voice shake. I just never thought at my age I'd need a lawyer and an accountant just to protect the money my own son left for me. About 15 minutes later, the mailman knocked. It was a big sealed manila envelope stamped "Confidential Mitchell Financial Records." I put it on the table and just stared at it for a while before I finally opened it. Inside were pages and pages of printouts, 8 transfers each for $5,000, $40,000 in total, sender Brandon Mitchell, recipient Ashley Mitchell, all on official bank paper. I read it all twice, and I still couldn't believe it. It was like the numbers were mocking me for being so naive. At the bottom, there was a note from Thompson in blue ink. Mrs. Ashley Mitchell was using this as her personal piggy bank. On top of the 8 transfers, there were other charges on the secondary card. Spas, shopping sprees, trips and a lease for a new car. The total she spent in just 8 months was $47,800. I just sat there. The morning sun was coming through the blinds, lighting up the pages. I guess that's the color of truth. I turned to the next page. A receipt from a spa in Houston for $1,200, a trip to Cancun for 2 people, $3,600, and a down payment on a new Lexus for $15,000. Every single receipt felt like a tiny little knife twisting. I remembered her coming into my house all perfume and fancy clothes, bringing me gifts, smiling that sweet little smile and saying, "Mother, I just want you to know I care for you like you're my own mom." Now I know what she meant by care. It meant taking every last penny she could get. I sat there for a long time, took a deep breath, and reached for my brown leather notebook. The one I call my justice journal. I wrote under the date very carefully, one word at a time. September 17th, got the records from Thompson. 8 transfers of $5,000 each, all going straight to Ashley. Days, trips, a new car. $47,800. I guess that's the price of my trust. My hand was shaking, but not because I was scared. It was shaking because I was about to get back everything she took from me. That afternoon, Catherine Brooks called. Her voice was firm, the kind of voice you get from spending years in a courtroom. "Dorothy," she said, "I've gone over everything Thompson sent. This is all rock solid. It's a clear-cut case of someone taking advantage of an elderly person's money. We can go the criminal route or just sue her. It's your call." I paused for a second, then said quietly, "Not yet. I don't want the court seeing this before Brandon does. He needs to see it with his own 2 eyes. That's the only way justice will mean a thing." Catherine was quiet for a moment, then she said slowly, "You're right. Nothing's going to hurt him more than finding out his wife used his own mother." I nodded. "That's why I need Reverend Anderson to help me. We'll set up a small charity night. An excuse to get them to show up." Catherine laughed a low, knowing sound. "A whole night staged just to expose the truth. Smart move, Dorothy. I'll have Thompson shorten the file. Give Brandon a summary he can't just ignore." As the sun went down, I drove to St. Mary's. The evening light made the old stone steps glow red. Reverend Anderson was inside lining up wooden chairs in the hall. After I laid out the plan, he thought for a second, and then smiled. "You know, sometimes the Lord doesn't need thunder to show a person's sins. Dorothy, all he needs is a little bit of truth." I squeezed his hand, thankful. "I just want Brandon to see that truth. Not for revenge, just so he'll stop being so blind." On the way home, I stopped at the corner store to get some things for the party I was planning. Outside, everything looked so peaceful. You'd never know that in just a couple of days. Ashley's entire world was going to come crashing down. That night back at my house, I opened Thompson's file again. I spread it all out on the dining table, every statement, every single receipt, every piece of proof. With a red pen, I circled all the big withdrawals, then slid everything into a thick beige envelope. On the front, I wrote in big, steady letters, "Donation document, Senior Assistance Fund." Only I knew there wasn't a single donation in there. Just a pile of guilt and lies. I sat there staring at those papers for a long time. My hands were shaking, but not because I was afraid of her, but because I could feel my own heart beating strong again after months of feeling nothing. For so long, I'd thought I was just a simple old widow, someone who needed to be taken care of. But looking at that pile of proof, I knew I was never weak. I was just made to believe I was. I stood up, poured a glass of water, and looked out into the backyard. The night sky was full of stars, and it was so quiet I could hear the crickets. I remembered what my husband always said. If someone hurts you, don't waste time waiting for them to say sorry. Just make them look at themselves in the mirror. I whispered to myself, and I'm about to do just that. Around 8 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Thompson again. "Mrs. Mitchell, I just wanted to let you know Catherine has everything ready for when you decide to file the lawsuit. But I respect your decision to wait. Waiting for the right moment is smart. Ashley will hang herself soon enough." I smiled. "I know," I said. "Thank you, Thompson. You've done more than just an accountant's job. You've helped me believe in justice again." After I hung up, I locked the file in the cabinet right under the drawer where I keep my family photos. On top of the file, I left a small note. This isn't just evidence of fraud. It's evidence that a mother refuses to be quiet anymore. Then I closed the drawer and turned the key. I heard the soft click. It was a small sound, but it felt final, like a promise I was keeping. That night, I wrote one short line in my notebook like a quick summary. Thompson got statements, receipts, and travel tickets, and the papers for the new car. Ashley blew through over $40,000, all from my allowance account. Catherine said we had enough for a financial abuse case, but I'm not going to court just yet. My son has to see this for himself first. Reverend Anderson is going to help me set up this fake charity dinner. The envelope will be right in the middle of the table. My hands are shaking. But not because I'm scared. It's because I'm about to get my dignity back. I'll finally sleep peacefully tonight. I put the pen down and just breathed out. The lamp on my desk lit up an old family photo. It was me and Brandon when he was just a little boy, back when his smile was so innocent, before he got so ambitious, or met that sweet-looking woman who's with him now. I gently touched the frame and whispered, "You once told me, Mom, you're the one person I trust more than anyone. I'm going to make you remember that." Then I turned off the light and walked slowly to my room. A little breeze was coming in through the curtains, and I could smell the lavender from the garden. I laid down, pulled the covers up, and felt so light, like all those months of being humiliated were finally over. For the first time in 8 long months, I actually slept. It wasn't because Ashley had been punished yet. It was because I knew the truth was finally on my side. I don't think I've ever loved a Sunday night this much. The sun was setting over my little Texas garden, making the lavender plants look golden. Inside, the beef stew was simmering on the stove, and the whole house smelled like herbs. It's been Brandon's favorite since he was a kid. I remember he'd ask for it every single birthday, saying my stew was better than any restaurant. But this time I wasn't cooking it with love. It was more like a final step, a last dinner so my son could finally see the truth I'd been hiding for way too long. I put a clean white tablecloth on the table with the old china plates and 3 small wine glasses. Right in the middle, I placed the beige envelope. It just sat there waiting. Around 7 p.m. I heard a car pull up. I looked out the window and saw Brandon and Ashley. He had on a simple white shirt, but she, of course, was way overdressed. She was in a light pink silk dress, new heels, and had a string of pearls around her neck. "Mom," Brandon said, giving me a big hug, "I miss this smell. Your stew. It always smells like home." I just smiled and put my hand on his shoulder. "I made it just for you like I used to." Ashley was standing behind him with that fake, perfect smile plastered on her face. "Oh, this is so cozy. You always make dinner so special, Mom." "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "Tonight's going to be very special." About 15 minutes later, Reverend Anderson showed up holding a big white envelope. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Here are those donation papers you wanted." I took them, gave him a nod, and told him to come sit down. Ashley tilted her head, her voice all sweet and syrupy. "Oh, so this really is a charity dinner, Mother. I honestly thought you were kidding." I poured wine for everyone and smiled. "Yes, it's a dinner to talk about important things, like trust-giving and honesty." Ashley tensed up a little when I said that. But she covered it up quick. Brandon just kept smiling. He had no idea what was really going on. After everyone was sitting down, I opened the envelope the Reverend brought over. The papers inside were perfectly organized. You could see Thompson's work in every line. I took out the stack and laid the first page on the table. "Son," I said nice and slow, "this is a list of all the donations I've received for the past 8 months. I think you need to see this." Brandon looked confused. "Donations, Mom, I send you money every month." I just slid the bank statement over to him. It was clear as day in bold letters. Recipient Ashley Mitchell, amount $5,000, date the 15th of every month. Brandon just went quiet. He looked down at the paper, his eyes going from confused to totally shocked. Ashley jumped in, her voice sounding sweet but a little too high. "Oh, that's got to be a mistake, Mother. You've been getting the money. Haven't you banks mess up names all the time?" I kept my voice calm. "Is that right? Then what about this spa bill from Houston for about $1,200? Charged to the second card with your name on it? Was that the bank's fault too?" Her face got tight, but she tried to laugh it off. "Oh my, maybe someone accidentally used my name." But before she could say more, a man's deep voice came from the doorway. "No, Mrs. Mitchell, nobody used your name by accident. I'm the one who put these records together." Everyone turned to look. It was Thompson standing in the doorway with more papers in his hand. I'd asked him to be here, but I didn't tell anyone else. Ashley's face went white. Brandon looked at him confused. "Who are you?" "My name's Thompson," he said, his voice firm. "I'm the head accountant at your company. Your mother asked me to investigate the money transfers being made in her name." The whole room went still. I stood up and looked right at Ashley. "Thompson can prove every single amount, every signature, and every transaction. 8 transfers, $5,000 each, and I never saw a penny of it." Brandon turned to his wife, his voice cracking. "Ashley, what is this?" She grabbed his hand, her eyes filling with tears. I was just borrowing it, that's all. I was going to pay it back. I didn't want to worry your mom." I let out a soft sigh. Borrowing for 8 months and faking bank documents in your mother-in-law's name? Ashley cried harder, but you could tell she wasn't sorry, just desperate. Brandon snatched his hand away, his eyes burning with anger. "What did you do to my mother?" He yelled, his voice shaking with pure rage. "I sent her that money so she could have a good life, and you spent it on cars, spas, and vacations, and you lied right to my face." Ashley took a step back, all the color gone from her face. "You don't get it. Brandon slammed his hand down on the table. A glass rattled. The room went dead quiet. "Enough!" The only sounds were Ashley's shaky breaths and my own heart pounding in my chest. Reverend Anderson, who had been quiet this whole time, folded his hands and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "Sometimes God doesn't have to punish people who do wrong. He just lets them see who they really are." I sat back down and looked at Ashley. My voice was calm. "You know, I never needed the money. What I needed was respect, and you didn't just take that from me, you took it from your own husband." Ashley started sobbing and stammering. "Mother, I'm so sorry. I was just trying to help Brandon handle things. I didn't mean to." I just shook my head. "Stop lying. You weren't managing anything. You were stealing." Then Thompson stepped up and put the last file down right in front of Brandon. "These are the original documents, Mr. Mitchell. Fake authorizations, bank statements, receipts. You should keep them. You're going to need them to protect what's left." Brandon didn't say a word. He just stared at the papers. Then he looked up at me. In his eyes, I saw a pain shame, and the moment he finally understood. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I can't believe I was stupid enough to trust her." I put my hand on his shoulder. "No, son. It's not a mistake to trust someone. The mistake belongs to the person who breaks that trust." Ashley just broke down sobbing, looking all around the room, desperate for a way out. "I can't do this anymore," she screamed, and then she jumped to her feet. "I don't need anybody's pity. If you want to believe her, fine." She grabbed her purse and just stormed out. Her heels clicked hard on the wood floor. Every step sounded final. Brandon didn't even try to stop her. He just sat there with his head down. The door slammed, and then silence. No more crying, no more excuses, just the faint smell of stew and the truth hanging heavy in the air. I looked at the open envelope. The papers were all over proof of 8 months of lies. I let out a breath. "It's over," I said quietly. "The show was over." Thompson nodded and started collecting the files. Reverend Anderson got up and put a hand on my shoulder. "You did something not every mother has the guts to do, Dorothy." I gave a weak smile, but I just felt empty inside. Winning didn't feel good. I just felt relieved. After everyone left, I stayed to clean up the table, the plates with food still on them, the wine glasses in Ashley's chair, which was still a little warm. I looked around the room, playing every word, every look back in my head. 8 months of lies, and it all came crashing down in one night. I picked up the scattered papers, put them in a neat pile, and slid them back in the envelope. My hands were shaking, but not because I was scared. It was because I finally had my dignity back. Outside, the wind picked up and blew the curtains. I looked up at the sky. The moonlight came through the window and lit up the envelope like it was proving a point. I guess all lies come out eventually. And tonight the truth came out right here in my house. I picked up the envelope and saw the blue stamp, Texas County Court. My chest got tight. I knew this was coming, but seeing it for real just felt awful. Inside was the official notice. Case number 23 CF 98-1. Dorothy Mitchell plaintiff versus Ashley Mitchell defendant. Elder financial exploitation and family fraud. Catherine worked faster than I thought she would. She sent me a quick text. "All the evidence is filed. Get ready for the first hearing next Monday." I put the letter down on the table. The afternoon sun came through the blinds, shining on that thick folder Thompson gave me last week. I touched the cover. It felt smooth and cold, but inside it held 8 months of betrayal. Justice was coming, but for some reason I didn't feel good about it. The morning of the hearing, the sky was gray. The wind was sharp and it felt like something was about to snap. I got there early with Catherine. She had on a brown coat and looked serious, ready for a fight. "You holding up Dorothy?" she asked. As we walked into the main hall, I tightened my lips. "I am, but I just hate that it's come to this." The courthouse hall was long with shiny white tiles. It smelled like coffee paper and stress. It was a strange place, but for some reason I felt safe there. When we walked into the courtroom, Ashley was already sitting there. She was at the defendant's table in a black suit, her hair pulled back neatly. Her face was pale, but she was trying to look calm. Next to her was a young lawyer, who looked nervous, probably a last-minute hire. Brandon was sitting behind them all by himself, not saying a word. He wouldn't look at me, and he wouldn't look at her. He just looked tired and empty. When I sat down, Ashley looked over at me. She gave this little smile that was part, "I dare you," and part, "I give up." The judge banged the gavel. The court is now in session for the case of elder financial exploitation. Dorothy Mitchell versus Ashley Mitchell. Catherine was the first one to stand up. She opened her file and her voice was clear and strong. Your Honor, for 8 straight months, the defendant, Mrs. Ashley Mitchell. She used a fake bank account in her mother-in-law's name to steal a total of $40,000. On top of that, the defendant used a company credit card from Mitchell and Partners for her own stuff, like spa days, trips, and buying a private car. The courtroom got dead silent. All you could hear was paper shuffling as Catherine laid out the proof. Bank statements, spa receipts, the invoice for the Lexus tickets to Cancun. She placed each one right in front of the judge. She stopped for a second, then looked straight at Ashley. The defendant didn't just take money from her mother-in-law. A 67-year-old widow, she hid it by faking legal papers and forging bank signatures. This was a cold, calculated plan to deceive her. Ashley's lawyer jumped up, trying to object. Your Honor, my client says this was just a misunderstanding about how they handled money in the house. Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell is getting older and might have forgotten about the transfers from her son's account and other expenses. I could feel my blood boiling. Ashley hung her head, pretending to be fragile, then looked up with a shaky voice. Your Honor, my mother-in-law has been pretty forgetful lately. I've given her money so many times, but she just doesn't remember. I never wanted to hurt anybody. Maybe it's all a misunderstanding. Those words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to leap up and start screaming, but Catherine put a hand on my shoulder, telling me to keep my cool. Then she stepped up, her voice as sharp as a razor. Your Honor, Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell's memory is good enough to write down every single day Ashley visited and every word she said. And here's the journal to prove it. Catherine pulled out my brown leather notebook and held it high. In here, Ms. Mitchell logged 8 whole months of visits with dates, times, and even the defendant's exact words. I left the envelope in the car. Every single line on every page matches the bank records perfectly. If that's what you call a bad memory, then it's the best one I've ever seen. A wave of whispers went through the courtroom. The judge looked over his glasses, slowly turned a few pages of the file, then frowned and looked over at Thompson, who was there as an expert witness. Mr. Thompson, the judge asked, are the numbers in this report correct? Thompson stood up, fixed his tie, and said clearly, Your Honor, I'm the head accountant at Mitchell and Partners. I confirm all the statements and records are 100% real. Every transfer came from Mr. Brandon Mitchell's personal account and went to an account opened in the name of Dorothy Mitchell. But that account was actually opened and controlled by the defendant, Mrs. Ashley Mitchell. The judge just nodded. His face was grim. I looked over at Ashley. She was looking down, digging her nails into her hands, her face completely pale. Catherine kept going. Your Honor, under the Texas Elder Protection Act, what the defendant did is financial abuse of an elderly person and financial fraud in a marriage. We are asking the court to make the defendant pay back the full amount, plus interest and court costs, and to ban her from managing or even touching any bank accounts that belong to Mr. Brandon Mitchell for the next 5 years. Nobody said a word. The only sound was the loud ticking of the clock on the wall. The judge looked up, and his voice was firm and final. After reviewing all the documents, testimony, and evidence, the court orders the defendant, Mrs. Ashley Mitchell, to pay back the full $40,000 to Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell. The defendant is no longer allowed to access or manage her husband, Mr. Brandon Mitchell's financial accounts. The defendant must also complete a mandatory 6-month financial course. This court is adjourned. The gavel banged 3 times. It was a dry, cold sound like a steel door slamming shut. Ashley just sank into her chair. I saw her trying to hold it together, but tears started streaming down her face. She turned to Brandon. Her voice was shaking. You have to believe me. I didn't mean to. Brandon didn't say anything. He just looked at her with these empty eyes, then turned away. Seeing that just broke my heart. I didn't feel happy or like I'd won, just a dull ache, because to get justice, I had to watch my own son's marriage fall apart. I'd always dreamed that Brandon would be happy with someone who loved and took care of him, with a warm home of their own. Now that dream was completely gone. Just buried in some court file. Catherine put a hand on my shoulder and said gently, You did the right thing, Dorothy. You didn't just protect yourself, you saved your son. I nodded, but I couldn't manage a smile. I realized then that justice cuts both ways. It cuts through all the lies, but it also cuts the delicate ties of family. When I walked out of the courthouse, the sky had already turned a dark gray. Rain started to fall, big, heavy drops splashing on the stone steps and breaking into hundreds of little ones. I stood under the awning and looked up. The rain felt cold on my skin, but somehow I felt lighter inside. There was no applause, no cheering, no feeling of victory, just the quiet peace you feel when you've finally seen something through to the end. I whispered softly like I was talking to the rain. Brandon, I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but at least I held on to the one thing I couldn't lose: the truth. The rain kept falling as I walked away step by step, leaving the courthouse behind me, a place where justice was served. But a mother's heart had quietly shattered. After the trial, my house went back to being dead silent. No more unexpected knocks, no more frantic calls, just the ticking of the clock and the sunlight sneaking through the curtains, lighting up the little dust particles floating in the air. Months went by and Brandon didn't call. No texts, no emails, no, "How are you, Mom?" I didn't blame him. I knew he was trying to clean up the mess his marriage had become. Still, on quiet nights when the moonlight came through the window, I'd often just sit there holding my phone, staring at the name Brandon Mitchell in my contacts. I'd never press call. I'd just look, and then put it down. I learned that being a mother sometimes means staying silent to let your child grow. The repayment came one morning in June. $40,000, a number I hadn't seen in 8 long months. I opened the email from the bank and saw the words, "Deposit completed successfully." I thought I'd feel happy, but instead I just felt empty. I sat in front of the computer for a long time. Then I had an idea. If that money was used for lies before, it had to be used for something good now. I used a little of it to fix the roof, get new curtains, and finally buy a real heater. For the rest of it, I called Reverend Anderson and Catherine. "I want to start a small foundation," I said, sitting there in the parish office. "I'll call it the Grace Hands Foundation. I want to help older folks who've been ripped off by their own kids or family, just like what happened to me." Reverend Anderson looked at me for a long time, then he smiled from behind his thick glasses. "Dorothy, this isn't just you being kind. This is how God takes something painful and makes something good grow from it." Catherine, always the practical one, flipped her notebook open and started writing. "We'll register it as a nonprofit. I'll handle all the legal stuff. Reverend Anderson can represent the community, and you'll be the founder." I gave a little laugh, holding my coffee cup tight. "I don't want to be the founder, Catherine. I'm just a mom who figured out how to get back up on her feet." 3 months later, the Grace Hands Foundation was officially open. Our first office was down in the basement of St. Mary's, with just 3 desks and an old printer, and a wooden sign that said, "Helping the Forgotten Find Their Voice Again." Every week, Reverend Anderson and I met with people who came to tell us their stories: an old woman whose daughter tricked her into signing away her house, a 70-year-old man whose grandson emptied his pension account, an 80-year-old widow whose name was forged on a bank loan. Every story hurt to hear, but I'd learned how to listen without crying. I'd just hold their hands and tell them what I went through. I told them that the truth doesn't save you overnight, but it always comes through right when you need it. Catherine worked non-stop contacting legal groups, applying for grants and training volunteers. I was in charge of what we called the heart work, listening to people, writing letters, comforting them, and keeping a record of their stories. One afternoon, while we were tidying up, Reverend Anderson said quietly, "Dorothy, isn't it strange your pain has become a light for other people?" I smiled. Maybe that's God's way of rewriting the ending for people who were stabbed in the back. As the foundation grew, reporters started to call. They wanted to interview the brave mother who sued her millionaire daughter-in-law. Some asked me to be on talk shows. One newspaper even offered me a book deal. I turned them all down. I didn't want to become a story for people to gossip about. I just wanted peace. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep an old wound from reopening. That's what I told Catherine when she asked why I was avoiding the media. She nodded. "You're right. Getting justice can be public, but healing has to be private." At night, I started a new routine. I'd put a small candle on the table near the window. Its soft light would hit the photo of Brandon and me. I'd light the candle and whisper, "Where are you? Brandon, I'm not angry. I just hope you learned something from all this pain." The flame flickered, lighting up that old picture, showing Brandon's innocent smile, the one he had before the betrayal. I touched the cold glass and a warmth spread through my chest. I realized forgiving isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let that pain control the rest of your life. Sometimes Reverend Anderson would ask, "Dorothy, have you really forgiven her?" I'd tell him maybe I have because I don't wish her any harm. But forget, no. Someone who's been betrayed can forgive, but they can never forget. He'd just smile. "You're still the strong Dorothy I know." Then one crisp fall morning, while I was watering plants on the porch, Catherine showed up with an envelope. "Our foundation just got funding from the Elder Justice Fund. They want to set up a long-term partnership." I stared at the envelope. I felt proud but also really humbled. Who would have thought the woman who used to live on church donations is now helping other people get their lives back? I didn't cry. I just smiled. A real soft smile. It was a gentle smile. But sometimes when it's quiet at night, I still hear the wind outside my door. And it almost sounds like my son calling for me. I know Brandon's not ready. He's probably still trying to forgive himself. Maybe being quiet is his way of making up for it. I don't blame him. I'm not waiting because I need him. I'm waiting for the whole truth to finally come out. The truth about being a mother, about trust, and about a love that can even survive being stabbed in the back. I know one day my son's going to knock on my door and I'll open it. It's not because I've forgotten what happened. It's because I've learned how to love without letting someone destroy me again. I light a candle and watch the flame flicker on the picture frame. Outside, I can smell the lavender blowing in with the wind. I whisper almost like a prayer, "My son." I don't need an apology from you. I just hope you remember this. Trust is the most valuable thing we have, and once you lose it, it can take a whole lifetime to get it back. The flame got smaller, just a tiny flicker, but I sat there and watched it until it went out completely. My heart felt really calm. I knew the storm was over, and this quiet was all mine. That night, it just poured rain from sundown till midnight. The wind was slamming against the windows, knocking over the lavender pots I'd brought inside that morning. The lamp in the living room made a yellow reflection on the wet glass, and it looked like broken pieces of the memories I'd been trying to put away for months. I was by the window going over some donation files for next week's Grace Hands Foundation meeting when I heard a knock. It was quiet, but they weren't giving up. But they kaushkaya, and I could feel the cold from the storm right through the door. I looked up. It was after 10 at night. At my age, you know, not many people knock on your door that late. I went to the door and my hand was shaking when I unlocked it. The door flew open and the wind just rushed in. And rain sprayed all over my coat. And there, standing in the pouring rain, was Brandon. He was soaked. His hair was stuck to his forehead. And his eyes were red and looked so tired. For a second, everything just stopped. The little boy I used to hold, the one I taught how to tie his shoes, was standing right in front of me, shaking like a lost kid. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid." Before I could even say anything, he came inside and just fell to his knees on the wet floor. He let out this sob. It was just so raw and broken. He wasn't holding anything back. He put his face in his hands and his shoulders were shaking. And me, I just stood there looking at my son. The man who thought he had it all figured out, now falling apart in the same house where I taught him to always be honest. I got down on my knees next to him and put my hand on his shoulder. I said softly, "Brandon, get up. Everybody makes mistakes. Forgiving isn't about forgetting. It's about saving yourself." He looked up and tears were mixed with the rain running down his face. "I don't deserve it," he said. "I doubted you. I let her play me. I didn't say a word while you were going through hell." "Mom?" I lost everything. I just shook my head. Led him over to the couch and started drying his hair with a towel, just like I did when he was a little boy. I did everything real slow and gentle. It felt like if I moved too fast, this whole fragile moment would just break. "I don't need you to say you're sorry," I told him quietly. "I just need you to remember this. The truth always comes out in the end. It just waits for you to be brave enough to face it." He didn't say anything, just stared into the fire. The rain was pounding on the window. It felt like forever before he finally spoke. Brandon's voice was just a whisper, like he was scared to say it. "Ashley's gone, Mom." I stopped drying his hair. He went on, "She cleaned out our savings, took what was left from the business, and just vanished. People are saying she ran off with some guy she knew before we got married." I just closed my eyes. I wasn't angry or surprised, just sad. It felt like the storm was finally over. Brandon's voice was shaking. "I tried calling her, texting her. I looked everywhere, but she's just gone. She left one text, 'You trusted the wrong person.'" I took his hand. It was warm and strong. "No, son," I said. "You just figured out the truth a little too late. But even when someone breaks your trust, having it is what makes us better than people who lie." He leaned his head on my shoulder just like a little kid who'd finally made it home. I could feel him breathing. It was shaky, but it was real. Then he started to sob. "I lost everything, Mom. My job, my money, my dignity." I just stroked his hair. I kept my voice calm. "No, you didn't, son. What you found tonight is so much more important. You found the strength to admit you were wrong." It rained almost until midnight. I made him some ginger tea while he sat curled up by the fire. You could see the steam from the cup mixing with the smell of the fire. The whole room felt warm. "I don't get how you can be so calm after all this," he said softly. I gave him a small smile. Because I know justice isn't about revenge. It's about things evening out. And Ashley, well, she got what was coming to her. He just nodded, staring at the fire. All I have left is you, Mom. No, I told him. You still have yourself, and what you do now is what's going to decide if you can really get back on your feet. He was quiet for a minute, then he just said, Mom, can I help out at your foundation? I want to do something that matters. Maybe I could start this weekend. I looked right at him. He was so sincere I almost got choked up. Are you sure, son? Yeah, Mom, I am. I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to learn how to use money to help people, not hurt them. I nodded. Okay then, come by on Saturday. Reverend Anderson will be glad to see you. After that, Brandon started coming to the foundation every weekend. He'd get there early and bring coffee for everybody. Then he'd sit with me organizing files and writing thank you notes to our donors. Some days he'd help Reverend Anderson move chairs. Other times he'd go with Catherine to meet with elderly victims and listen to their stories. You know how they say time heals all wounds. But it wasn't time for me. Seeing my son change, that's what really healed me. Then one morning, I saw him at his desk totally focused on fixing a spreadsheet. The sun was shining on his brown hair. And for a second I saw my little Brandon again, the same kid who used to help me with the dishes and ask, Mom, what does being honest mean? I looked at him, and my heart just felt so full and thankful. Brandon, I said softly. He looked up. You've worked through your own pain, son, I said with a smile. Not many people are brave enough to do that. He gave me a small, real smile, the first one I'd seen in months. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. I don't know how much longer I would have been eaten up by guilt. I put my hand on his shoulder, my voice soft. I didn't save you, Brandon. You saved yourself. Outside, it started to rain a little. I glanced out the window. Raindrops ran down the glass. The door he knocked on that stormy night was standing wide open. No rain was getting in, just the smell of wet earth and lavender on the wind. In that quiet moment, I got it. Life, no matter how messed up, always leaves a door open for you to come back. And as I watched my son smile in that sunny room, I knew our storm was over. Peace had finally come home. One fall morning, with sunlight streaming in, I sat at my desk just staring at a blank page. A breeze brought in the faint smell of lavender from the porch. My favorite scent. It's gentle but tough, and it reminds me to hang in there. I picked up my pen. The ink just started to flow, and the first words came out. Ashliara, thank you, because of you. I learned what honesty and self-respect are really worth. I stopped for a second, watching the ink dry in the light. It was strange I didn't feel any anger, just this quiet calm. I kept writing. If it wasn't for you, I might still think the truth is simple, that kindness always gets paid back, but you taught me that's not how it works. Truth only matters when you're brave enough to fight for it. You took my money, but you gave me something in return. Something money could never buy, freedom. I smiled a little. I don't know where you are now, or if you've found any peace. But if you ever read this, I want you to know I've forgiven you. Not because you deserve it, but because I'm not going to be tied to the mess you left behind. I put my pen down and looked at the full page, a letter for nobody, but it was written with a clear head from a heart that had been broken and fixed itself. I folded it, put it in an envelope, and opened a little wooden box my late husband used for old birthday cards. I put the letter inside with some family photos and a note he wrote me once. Dorothy, truth does not need to be shouted, only lived. I closed the box and heard the soft click like a chapter was finally ending. In the next few months, the Grace Hands Foundation grew faster than I could have ever imagined. Every week we had new people coming in. Some were crying, others had messy files, and some just needed a place to finally tell the story they'd kept quiet for so long. I saw myself in them, people who were lied to and pushed around, but who still held on to the idea that there's justice in the world. And every time we helped someone get their rights back, it felt like I was getting a piece of my own life back. One day, Brandon stopped by the office with 2 hot coffees. He sat next to me, looking around the room at all the posters, charts, and smiling faces on thank you cards. I can't believe how big your foundation's gotten, he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. You really did turn all that pain into something good. I chuckled a little, putting my cup down. Not goodness, son, justice. God forgives, but justice never forgets. Brandon nodded slowly. Maybe I'm finally starting to understand that. I looked at him and I saw the man he'd become, not the weak person who used to run from the truth, but someone who finally did the right thing. And just like that, I felt this huge weight lift off me. I'm not scared of being poor anymore. Those days of waiting for canned food at the church are over, but I'm not ashamed when I think about them. If anything, I'm thankful those hard times taught me how to get through anything. I've learned there's something that's worth way more than money. It's self-respect. When you have that, nobody can ever really beat you even if you lose everything. So now I still get up early every morning. I make some tea and open the windows to let the sun in. The sunlight hits the picture of my husband and me. He's in a white shirt with his arm around my shoulder, and his eyes are so gentle and kind. I just smile at the photo. I wish you could see this. You'd be proud of me, right? If he was still here, I know he'd be smiling. Not because I got the money back, but because I held on to that strength he always loved about me. The strength to never let anyone tell me what I'm worth. Anyway, that night after Brandon went home from the office, I stayed late. I opened up that old journal I'd been writing in this whole time, and I wrote the very last line. The thief is gone, but the lesson isn't. I stopped and looked out the window. The sky was getting all light orange. I could hear raindrops on the roof. In the distance, the church bells were ringing slow and deep. I closed the journal, and it felt like I'd just finished saying a prayer. I didn't need revenge, and I didn't need anyone to clap for me. Just the peace of knowing that even in this messed up world, being honest still matters. I blew out the candle next to the picture. The flame went out and I could smell the wax in the air, and in the dark I just whispered to myself, "Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for taking it all. Because of you, I finally learned the most important thing in life isn't about holding on. It's about learning how to get back up." A year went by and it was spring in Texas. The lavender by the porch was growing like crazy and the sky was a soft blue. I was making tea when the phone rang. It was a call from Austin. A woman with a happy voice said, "Ms. Dorothy Mitchell, congratulations. You've been chosen as the Texas Woman of the Year. The council gives this award to people who've helped with social justice and rights for seniors. We'd love for you to give a speech at the ceremony next week." I just froze for a second. It wasn't pride, it was just, I couldn't believe it. A year ago, I was a 67-year-old widow getting help from the church, and now they were calling me a symbol of peaceful justice. Life, I guess, always finds a way of turning around if you just hang on to the truth. The ceremony was in this big hall at the city courthouse. I picked out a light blue dress, something simple, just like my life now. Nothing fancy, no pretending. When I walked up on stage, the whole room started clapping. I looked out at the crowd and saw Brandon in the second row. He was wearing a white shirt and his eyes were just shining with pride like when he was a little boy. The host smiled and said, "Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell, the founder of the Grace Hands Foundation, a woman who took her own pain and used it to fight for justice, helping dozens of seniors get their dignity back." I walked over to the wooden podium. My hands were shaking a little, but my voice was strong. "Thank you," I started, "but I'm not here to tell my story today. I'm here to tell the story of a mother who I won't name who was cheated by her own daughter-in-law, a woman who lost all her money and all her trust." You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone in that room, young and old, leaned forward. I used to think that when someone betrays you, they say silence is the best revenge, but I learned something different. When someone breaks your trust, you get it back with the truth. No yelling, no hate, just the facts, because the truth has a power that no punishment ever will. The applause was huge, and it went on for a long time. I just paused and took a deep breath. From the front row, I saw Brandon wiping his eyes. The look on his face almost wrecked me, not because I felt sorry for him, but because I knew he finally got it. When I started talking again, my voice got softer, warmer. It was like I was talking to everyone who'd ever been hurt by someone they trusted. Justice isn't just about what happens in a courtroom. It starts the second you get the nerve to say, "That's enough." Even when the person who hurt you is someone you love. That's the bravest thing any mom, any dad, or any person can do. After the ceremony, we took pictures, shook hands, got flowers. I don't remember all the faces, but I remember feeling so at peace. I wasn't bitter or holding any grudges. I just felt good. When I stepped outside, a light rain was starting to fall. The Texas sky always has a way of reminding me that there's light even in the rain. I stood under the awning watching the raindrops shine under the streetlights, and my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Brandon came up next to me and put his jacket over my shoulders. "Mom," he said softly, "I've never seen you look so bright." I smiled and held his hand. "It's not about the award, sweetie. It's because you're here just like the old days. But now you really understand what it means to be honest." He smiled back, his eyes still a little wet. "I do, Mom, and I promise I'm going to live by it." I looked up at the sky. The rain was still coming down, but it didn't feel cold. I felt a new hope inside me, a feeling of freedom, of a new start. That night back at home, I sat at my desk and opened my old journal. I wrote the very last line. A mother's biggest win isn't in court, it's teaching her child how important honesty is. I closed the book and listened to the wind outside. You could still smell the rain. On the table, the little candle flickered, putting a soft light on our family photo. My husband, me, and little Brandon. 3 faces in one frame, all connected by one truth. Love doesn't just disappear, it just changes. I smiled. My life wasn't loud or fancy anymore, but it was full in its own quiet, peaceful way. And if you're still listening, maybe sitting in your own quiet room tonight, I just want to say this. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end of my story. If you've ever been betrayed or treated unfairly by your own family, share your story in the comments. I really want to hear it because maybe your voice can help someone else find hope. And if you believe, like I always have, that the truth always comes out, please hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for the next stories. I'll be telling you about women, about mothers, and about people who got knocked down but found a way to get back up, all because of the truth.